Guys, Mrs. Shirts here. I promised that I would put up a video for you about what we've been talking about lately in class, so I thought I would do that, most especially concentrating on phenotype and genotype since that's your homework tonight. So a couple things that we've been talking about, first of all, is heredity, and that is just the passing of genetic information from parent to offspring. So it's how we get our DNA, basically. We know now, because of Gregor Mendel, who's known as the father of genetics and heredity, we know that we get our heritable factors from each of our parents, half from our mom, half from our dad, and that makes us who we are. That doesn't mean that we look just like our mom or just like our dad, because remember that in sexual reproduction, which humans do, we're a combination. And even then, we may look like great aunts or great grandmas or great 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 uncles because their DNA is still in our DNA. So a couple things that we've talked about is a characteristic versus a trait. So a characteristic is a feature that has two different forms. For example, hair color, hair texture, eye shape, face shape, those kinds of things. And then a trait is a different form of that characteristic. So, for example, a trait for hair color could be brown or blonde or ginger. And a form of hair texture could be curly or straight or wavy. Things like that. So our traits, a trait, remember, is a different form of a characteristic. And there are two different kinds of traits. There are recessive traits and there are dominant traits. The easiest way to remember a dominant trait versus a recessive trait is the dominant trait dominates over the other one. It always shows up in the organism. And the recessive trait, you still have that trait in your DNA, but it doesn't show up in you. Then we talked about alleles, and those are the different versions of a gene. So the genes make up our chromosomes, and our chromosomes make up our DNA. So for me, for example, I have brown eyes. My husband has brown eyes, and my middle son has green eyes. So that means that his alleles aren't brown eye, because he doesn't have brown eyes. It has to be brown eyes, green eyes somewhere. Somewhere in one of our DNAs, mine or my husband's, has to have the green eye trait for it to show up in Kyle. Speaking of alleles, there are also different kinds of alleles. So there can be a recessive allele or a dominant allele. A dominant allele means that it shows up in your phenotype if one or two copies are present. And the recessive allele shows up in your phenotype when only two copies are present. So you have to inherit both of those from your parents. For example, I have brown eyes. My dad has brown eyes, but my mom has blue eyes. However, she had to have passed on the brown trait to me as well. So it had to be in her DNA somewhere for me to have brown eyes. Complete dominance is when one trait is completely dominant over the other. So it pushes out the recessive part. It's still in your DNA, remember, but it doesn't show up in you. Which leads us to tonight's homework, which is genotype versus phenotype. So our genotype, this first part sounds like genes, so it kind of reminds me of our DNA. Our genotype is the combination of all the alleles you inherited from your parents. Every single allele, everything in your DNA is your genotype. Our phenotype, though, is only our observable traits. So for me, an observable trait would be brown eyes, because I have brown eyes. It would be brown hair, because I have brown hair. Things like that. So I'll go over the one that we did in class, just so you have a better example of your phenotype, because this is what we're going to do in class today. And, of course, I did Justin Timberlake. So we can look at Justin Timberlake. We can't see his genotype because we can't see his DNA, but we can see his phenotype, those observable traits. So we can see that he has brown hair, he has blue eyes, he has almond-shaped eyes, he has a heart-shaped face, he has a bit of a pointed nose, It looks like he has detached earlobes, but we can't tell from here. He has facial hair. He has thin lips, you guys told me in class. So those are things that we can see on Justin Timberlake that we know is his phenotype. We can see that he has dimples here. But someone was asking me, do we put no dimples if we don't have no dimples? No. A phenotype are only the things that you can see. So let's do one more. We'll do something a little bit more silly this time. Let's do SpongeBob. All right, so for SpongeBob, his phenotype would be 3 eyelashes, round eyes, blue eyes, 4 fingers, square body shape. We could see that he has holes in his body. He has dimples. I think these are supposed to resemble dimples. He has a long nose. So those are, he is yellow, obviously. So those are things that would be in SpongeBob's phenotype. We'll do one more practice. I'll do this for Mackenzie. So we're going to do Dora this time. So if we look at Dora, we see that she has very much a round face. That's in her phenotype. We can see that. She has brown eyes. She has 5 fingers. She is short in stature. She has black hair. We can't look and tell, but it sort of looks like she has smooth hair. If you've ever watched the cartoon, you can see she has smooth hair. She has brown skin. I think those are called monolid eyes, but I cannot remember the exact shape of them. So when you're looking for things, and apparently she has no ears. So when we're looking for the things like face shape, eye shape, nose shape, just Google that and it will bring you up examples. Like if I go to eye shape and I go to images, it brings me up all these different kinds of eye shapes and it will explain what they look like. If you go to face shape, same thing. It will do the exact same thing. It will give you face shapes that you can look to see what is your face shape. I don't know about nose shape. I've never Googled. Oh, yep. Okay, so nose shape. We can go there also. Nope, that's face shape. Oh, here we go. So nose shape, it can tell you, do you have a hooked nose or a droopy nose? I think I probably have an upturned nose. So those are what you are looking for. Remember, for you can always also do attached versus unattached, innie or outie belly button, anything that you can see on you. Do you have hair on your fingers or your toes? That is genetic and that is your phenotype because we can see it. So just have fun with this. Don't stress out about it. And this is due tomorrow in class. And I look